The Senate chamber smells like blood. 23 stab wounds, one man, and a dying gasp that, according to legend, wasn't even in Latin. They thought killing him would save the Republic. It didn't. It ended it. Julius Caesar was murdered by the very men who feared him. But here's the thing. By the time the dagger hit his flesh, the Republic was already gone. He had already won. This is the story of how one man, through sheer political cunning, brutal military genius, and a willingness to burn everything down, turned the greatest republic the ancient world had ever seen into a monarchy. And he did it in less than 20 years. The young patrician with nothing, Rome, 100 BC. Gaius Julius Caesar is born into a patrician family with a famous name and almost no money. The genes Julia, Caesar's family, claim descent from Venus herself. Great bloodline, empty coffers. That combination is dangerous. A man with ambition, ancestry, and nothing to lose. His father died when Caesar was 16. No inheritance to speak of. And the Rome he inherited was a city tearing itself apart. The social war, the dictatorship of Sulla, prescription lists where enemies were hunted in the streets. Caesar was nearly on one of those lists. Sulla wanted him dead. Why? Caesar had married Cornelia, the daughter of Sulla's political enemy, Cinna. When Sulla demanded Caesar divorce her, Caesar refused. He was 19 years old. He refused a dictator. His family begged him to comply. He fled instead, hiding in the hills of the Sabine country, sick with fever, bribing soldiers who came looking for him. Sulla eventually relented, reportedly saying Caesar had many a Marius in him. That was not a compliment. Marius was the general who had marched on Rome itself. Sulla saw something in this young man that made him uneasy. He was right to be uneasy. Caesar left Rome for the east. He studied rhetoric in Rhodes. He was captured by pirates. And here, in this almost comedic episode, we get our first real look at who Caesar was. The pirates demanded a ransom of 20 talents. Caesar laughed. He told them they were undervaluing him. He insisted they demand 50. During the weeks he waited for the ransom, he slept whenever he wanted, ordered the pirates to be quiet when he was resting, recited poetry to them, and, with a smile, told them that once he was free, he would return and crucify every single one of them. They thought he was joking. He wasn't. He raised a small fleet, sailed back, captured them, and crucified them all. As promised. That is Julius Caesar. The political climb. Back in Rome, Caesar understood something most aristocrats didn't. Power in Rome had two engines, money and the crowd. He didn't have the money, so he went after the crowd first. He spent lavishly on public games, on gladiatorial contests, on feasts for the Roman people. All borrowed money, all strategic. His debts were so enormous that his creditors once tried to stop him from leaving Rome. But every sesterce spent bought him goodwill with the plebs. He climbed the cursus honorum, the Roman ladder of office, with unusual speed, Cester, Aedile, Pontifex Maximus. That last one was a masterstroke. The Pontifex Maximus was Rome's chief priest, a lifetime position of immense prestige. Caesar ran for it in 63 BC against two far more senior senators. He told his mother that morning, "Today you will see your son either as Pontifex Maximus or in exile." He won. Then came the praetorship. Then the governorship of further Spain, where he actually went on campaign, restored his finances, and earned a military reputation. He returned to Rome in 60 BC ready for the consulship, the highest elected office in the Republic. But he needed allies, and so he built the most consequential political alliance in Roman history. The first triumvirate, 3 men, 3 power bases, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. He had the money Caesar needed, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, Rome's most celebrated general. He had the military prestige, and Caesar, the political genius who understood that these two men's rivalry was the very thing that made them both vulnerable. He didn't just join the triumvirate, he designed it. In 59 BC, Caesar became consul, and he used that year to push through land reform legislation, Pompey's eastern settlements, and grain subsidies, all fiercely opposed by the Senate. He didn't debate them, he bulldozed them. When his co-consul Bibulus tried to block him using religious obstructions, declaring the auspices unfavorable and effectively canceling the legislative calendar, Caesar simply ignored him. Romans joked that year was the consulship of Julius and Caesar, the same man twice, because Bibulus had vanished into irrelevance. By the end of 59 BC, Caesar had what he truly wanted: command of the armies in Gaul. The Gallic Wars. What Caesar did in Gaul over the next 8 years was nothing short of astonishing. He wasn't supposed to conquer Gaul. His initial mandate was to manage the existing Roman provinces. But Caesar saw opportunity where his orders saw administration. The Helvetii, a powerful Celtic confederation, were migrating through Roman-allied territory in 58 BC. Caesar stopped them, defeated them, pushed them back, then he kept going. He fought the Germanic chieftain Ariovistus, drove the Germans back across the Rhine, and then, in a move of pure psychological theater, built a bridge across the Rhine in 10 days, marched into Germanic territory, made his point, and tore the bridge down. He crossed to Britain, twice. Not for territorial gain, Rome never really held Britain at this point, but for the spectacle of it. A Roman general standing at the edge of the known world. He fought the Belgae in the north, he fought the Veneti at sea, and then came Vercingetorix, 52 BC, the greatest test of Caesar's generalship. Vercingetorix, young, charismatic, brilliant, united the Gallic tribes for the first time into a coordinated resistance. He implemented a scorched earth policy, denying Caesar supplies. He won at Gergovia, forcing a Roman retreat. The whole Gallic campaign teetered. Caesar's response was a military marvel. He cornered Vercingetorix at Alesia. Then, with the Gauls inside the walls and a massive Gallic relief army on the outside, Caesar's men built 2 rings of fortifications, one facing inward to besiege Alesia, one facing outward to hold off the relief army. 80,000 Romans, trapped between 2 forces, each larger than their own. They held. Vercingetorix surrendered, walked out of the gates, threw his weapons at Caesar's feet. By the end, Caesar had fought over 50 significant engagements. He had conquered a territory roughly the size of modern France and Belgium. He had killed or enslaved over 1 million Gauls, numbers that shocked even Romans. He had also made his army his, personally loyal, battle-hardened, and now, critically, he needed them because Rome had turned against him. The Rubicon. While Caesar was in Gaul, the first Triumvirate had collapsed. Crassus was dead, killed at Carrhae in 53 BC in one of Rome's worst military defeats. Pompey, Caesar's former ally and son-in-law, had drifted into the Senate's arms. His wife, Caesar's daughter Julia, had died in 54 BC. The personal bond was gone. The Senate moved against Caesar. They demanded he return to Rome as a private citizen, meaning he would be vulnerable to prosecution. His enemies had a list of charges waiting. He would be destroyed politically, legally, financially. Caesar's counter-proposal: let him stand for the consulship in absentia so he could transition directly from military command to office without the gap of vulnerability. The Senate refused. On the 1st of January, 49 BC, the Senate passed the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the emergency decree. Caesar was declared a public enemy. He had 1 legion. The Rubicon River was the legal boundary. No Roman general could cross it with an army. To do so was treason. Caesar stood at the riverbank. He understood exactly what crossing meant. He reportedly said, "The die is cast," and he walked in. It took him 72 days to control all of Italy. Pompey's forces, unprepared, disorganized, fled to Greece. Town after town opened its gates. Caesar showed mercy at every stop, a deliberate policy he called clementia, clemency. He was not Sulla. He would not post prescription lists. He would not execute the defeated. This too was strategy. Civil war and victory. Pompey was a great general. Caesar was a greater one. At Pharsalus in 48 BC in central Greece, the 2 men finally met in open battle. Pompey had more men, better cavalry, the backing of most of the Roman Senate. Caesar, reading the battle before it began, repositioned his cavalry and planted a hidden fourth line of infantry. When Pompey's cavalry charged and began to envelop the flank, Caesar's hidden infantry rose up, thrust their javelins at the horsemen's faces, and shattered the attack. Pompey watched his cavalry break and fled the field. He sailed to Egypt, looking for refuge. He found an assassin's knife instead. When Caesar arrived in Egypt and was presented with Pompey's head, he reportedly wept. We don't know if he was genuinely grieved or performing for the audience. With Caesar, it's often impossible to tell. Probably both. In Egypt, he met Cleopatra, backed her claim to the throne against her brother, and, after the Alexandrian War, left her pregnant and moved on. He still had enemies. He fought in Asia Minor, where he famously dispatched a message back to Rome, Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. He fought Pompey's sons and remaining allies in Africa and Spain. By 45 BC, it was over. Caesar was the last man standing. Dictator and the Ides of March. The Senate made him dictator, then dictator for 10 years. Then, early in 44 BC, Dictator Perpetuo. Dictator in perpetuity. That last title was the mistake. Or perhaps it was a test. Caesar didn't behave like a traditional Roman conqueror. He reformed the calendar. The Julian calendar would be used for 16 centuries. He reformed the Senate, the courts, the grain supply. He planned massive infrastructure projects, a war against Parthia, the drainage of the Pontine marshes. He was governing Rome like a monarch, not yet wearing a crown. He refused the diadem offered by Mark Antony, at least publicly. But the direction was unmistakable, and the old guard saw it. Brutus, Cassius, 60 conspirators in total, men who called themselves the Liberatores, the Liberators. On the 15th of March, 44 BC, the Ides of March, they struck. Caesar had been warned. His wife Calpurnia had dreamed of his murder. A soothsayer had told him to beware the day. He went to the Senate anyway. They surrounded him, pulled his toga. The first blade came down. He fought back until he saw Brutus among them. Then, according to some accounts, he stopped. Et tu, Brute. Whether he actually said it, we don't know. But the sentiment is real. The betrayal of the man he had treated like a son broke something. He pulled his toga over his face and fell at the foot of Pompey's statue. 23 wounds, only one fatal. Epilogue, the legacy. The Senate thought killing Caesar would restore the Republic. Within 18 months, Rome was at war again. Mark Antony, Octavian, a second civil war, then a third. And when the dust settled, Octavian, Caesar's heir by adoption, stood alone. He took a new name, Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The republic Caesar had broken was never rebuilt. The monarchical system he had pioneered, never formally declared, always hidden behind republican titles, became the template for 500 more years of Roman rule. And the name Caesar, it didn't die with him. Kaiser, Czar, both words descend directly from it. For 2,000 years, rulers across Europe and beyond borrowed his name as a title. That is the measure of one man, not the 23 wounds, not the Senate floor, not even the empire he made possible. It's the fact that 2 millennia later, when we want a single word that means absolute power, we still reach for his name. Caesar. If you made it this far, you already know history hits different when it's told right. Subscribe if this is your kind of content. There's a lot more coming. Drop in the comments. Was Caesar a hero, a tyrant, or something Rome itself created?